I secretly listened. As my boyfriend flirted with another woman, then he came home, kissed me, and lied to my face. My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 28 years old, and 6 weeks ago, I still believed I was going to marry Ethan Carter. We had been together for 3 years. Ethan was 31, 3 years older than me. We weren't the kind of couple who looked perfect only for social media. We had routines, inside jokes, favorite restaurants, and real plans for the future. We talked about moving in together after his lease ended, getting engaged the following year, and eventually buying a house of our own. One evening, Ethan sent me a home listing. "Too suburban," he joked. "Only if you expect me to mow the lawn. I'll handle that." At the time, moments like that convinced me we were building a future together. Looking back, I realized nothing collapsed overnight. There was no lipstick on his collar or suspicious text lighting up his phone. Instead, the changes arrived so gradually that I kept finding excuses for them. Ethan started placing his phone face down whenever I walked into the room. If it buzzed during dinner, he grabbed it almost immediately, glanced at the screen, smiled to himself, and locked it before I could see anything. Whenever I asked who had messaged him, the answer was always short. Work. Danielle. The group chat. Then the late night started. Ethan worked as a project manager for a construction company, so working late wasn't unusual. Deadlines slipped, clients changed plans, and projects ran behind schedule. I understood all of that. What I didn't understand was why the man who used to complain about staying past 6 suddenly started working until 9 several nights a week. One Tuesday, he cancelled dinner after I'd already arrived at the restaurant. "Can't make it. Emergency at work." I looked at the text just as the server set down 2 glasses of water. "Will someone be joining you?" I forced a smile. "No, it'll just be me." Later that night, I told Ethan he could have warned me sooner. "What was I supposed to do?" he snapped. "Leave work because you don't like eating alone?" "That's not what I meant." "It's exactly what you meant." He apologized the next morning, but somehow I ended up feeling guilty for bringing it up. That became our pattern. Every question I asked somehow turned into proof that I was the problem. A few nights later, we were watching a movie, but Ethan hadn't looked at the screen once. He sat scrolling through his phone, angling it away whenever I moved closer. "You've been acting different," I said. "Different how?" "Distant." "I'm just tired." "You've been tired for 6 weeks." His expression hardened. "So I'm not allowed to be stressed now." "I'm trying to understand what's changed." "Nothing's changed. You're looking for problems because you're insecure." He grabbed his keys and left, saying he needed space. I spent the rest of the night wondering if he was right. Maybe I was overthinking everything. Maybe I was letting fear convince me something was wrong. Or maybe my instincts were trying to tell me something I didn't want to believe. My best friend, Mia Sullivan, noticed before I admitted any of it. We'd been inseparable since college, and she could read me better than almost anyone. When we met for lunch that weekend, she didn't even wait for the menus. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." "You've checked your phone all afternoon." Once I started talking, I couldn't stop. I told her about the late nights, the cancelled plans, the secretive phone, and how every conversation somehow ended with me apologizing. When I finished, she asked quietly, "Do you think he's cheating?" "I don't know, but you've thought about it." I lowered my eyes. "What if I'm wrong?" I whispered. "What if he's really just stressed? And what if he's lying to you?" I had no answer. "You deserve certainty," Mia said. "Not weeks of wondering whether you're losing your mind." "I'm not going through his phone." "I wouldn't ask you to." "Then what?" She hesitated before speaking. "Ethan goes to Murphy's every Thursday with his coworkers, right?" "Usually." I could start a conversation with him. I stared at her. "Mia, I'm not flirting with him. I'm giving him an ordinary chance to tell the truth. If he mentions you and walks away, you'll have your answer. And if he doesn't, then you'll stop blaming yourself for noticing something was wrong." I hated the idea. It felt manipulative, and healthy relationships weren't supposed to work this way. But every attempt at an honest conversation had ended the same way, with Ethan calling me insecure and refusing to answer simple questions. I wasn't looking for a reason to leave him. I was looking for a reason to believe him. I wasn't trying to catch him doing something wrong. I was trying to understand whether the person I trusted was still being honest with me. I didn't need proof to punish him. I needed the truth because I was tired of questioning my own reality. For days, I argued with myself. On Monday, I told Mia we weren't doing it. On Tuesday, Ethan cancelled dinner again. On Wednesday, I woke after midnight and found him texting near my bedroom window. The moment he realized I was awake, he locked his phone. "Who are you texting?" "Work." "At 2 in the morning." He sighed. "This is exactly what I mean, Claire. You're watching everything I do." I didn't sleep again that night. By Thursday afternoon, I'd made my decision. "Do it," I told Mia. She paused. "Are you sure?" "No," I admitted. "But I can't keep living like this. I knew it wasn't the healthiest choice, but neither was staying in a relationship where I was constantly being told my own concerns weren't real. The plan was simple. Mia would meet Ethan at Murphy's if the opportunity came naturally, keep me on the phone and let me hear the conversation from my car. No flirting beyond polite conversation. No fake romance. Just one chance for Ethan to show me who he really was. If he was still the man I believed he was, he'd mention his girlfriend and walk away. Thursday night, I parked 2 blocks from the bar. My hands shook as I connected the call. My breath fogged the windshield while I waited outside Murphy's. For nearly 20 minutes, all I heard was music, laughter, and glasses clinking. I was close to hanging up when Mia finally spoke. "So do you come here often?" "Every Thursday," Ethan replied. Then he laughed. "Better view tonight, though." My stomach dropped. That morning, he'd kissed me goodbye and told me he loved me. Now he was flirting with my best friend as though I didn't exist. "Does that line usually work?" Mia asked. "Depends who I'm talking to." Their conversation flowed effortlessly. Ethan joked about work, complimented her smile, asked where she liked to eat, what music she listened to, and whether she lived nearby. He wasn't politely making conversation. He was trying to impress her. At one point he admitted, "I don't usually leave my friends to talk to someone. So why tonight?" "You seemed worth it." I'd heard him say almost the same thing to me years earlier. Then came the moment I'd been dreading. "Can I get your number?" he asked. Mia let the silence hang before asking, "Don't you have a girlfriend?" For a second, I thought he'd stop. Instead, he sighed. "It's complicated." "How?" "We've been together a long time, but honestly, it feels over." "Does she know that?" "Not yet." My chest tightened. "So why haven't you ended it?" "Ending a long relationship isn't that simple." "Then maybe you should do that before asking another woman for her number." Instead of answering, Ethan smiled. "So, is that a no?" The conversation should have ended there. Instead, he kept talking. He complained that I had become suspicious lately and said he felt like every conversation turned into an argument. He never mentioned why I had started asking questions in the first place. I stopped crying. What replaced the tears was certainty. For weeks, Ethan had convinced me my instincts couldn't be trusted. Listening to him blame me while pursuing another woman made one thing painfully clear. I had never been imagining any of it. Mia quietly texted me. "Do you want me to leave?" I stared at the screen before replying. 10 more minutes. I needed to know how far he'd go. "So if I gave you my number?" Mia asked. "I'd text you. And your girlfriend." "I'm ending it." "When?" "Soon." We were supposed to have dinner with my mother that weekend. Apparently, he'd already planned a different ending. Mia handed him a fake number, wished him good night, and walked out. A minute later, she climbed into my car. "I didn't think he'd actually do it," she whispered. "Part of me did." "We can leave. You don't have to face him tonight." "Yes, I do." "Why?" "Because tomorrow he'll tell me I misunderstood everything. I need to see him lie while he still thinks I know nothing." I got home before Ethan, washed my face, changed into pajamas, and waited. At 11:12, his key turned in the lock. He smiled, kissed me, and asked about my day as if nothing had happened. "How was your night?" I asked. "Boring. Same people, same complaints." I nodded. "Good." He looked at me, confused. The next morning, I set a mug of coffee in front of him and quietly asked, "Want to explain what happened at Murphy's?" He frowned, insisted he had no idea what I was talking about, and reached for his phone. Instead of arguing, I pressed play. His own voice filled the kitchen. "Every Thursday, better view tonight though." The recording continued with every compliment, every lie, and finally his request for Mia's number. When he described me as basically a roommate, the colour drained from his face. "You set me up." "I gave you a chance to be honest," I replied. "Everything after that was your choice." Hence, immediately stopped defending his actions and started attacking mine, accusing me of manipulating the situation, invading his privacy and trying to trap him. When I reminded him that he'd asked another woman for her number and told her he planned to leave me, he insisted our relationship had already been miserable. "Then why did you come home, kiss me, and tell me nothing happened?" I couldn't answer. Instead, he blamed me for pushing him away, calling me insecure and controlling before snapping. Maybe I should have cheated. At least then your little stunt would have made sense. That was the only answer I needed. I dropped one of his travel bags onto the floor and told him to pack. He refused until I called my older brother, Daniel. 15 minutes later, Daniel was standing quietly by the front door while Ethan stuffed his clothes into a bag, still insisting I was throwing away our relationship over nothing. As he walked out, he looked back and said, "No one's ever going to want someone this paranoid." I held his gaze. I didn't create the man I heard last night. I finally met him. Daniel closed the door behind him, helped me pack the rest of Ethan's belongings, and stayed until the locksmith finished replacing every lock. Watching the old lock come off the door felt like closing the last opening Ethan still had into my life. The peace lasted less than a day. That evening, my phone lit up with Ethan's messages. At first, he begged me to talk. When I ignored him, he accused me of overreacting, then switched to apologizing, reminiscing about our happiest memories, telling me he loved me, and finally blaming me for destroying everything we'd built. The words kept changing, but the pattern never did. Not once did he admit what he'd actually done. After I blocked his number, new ones kept appearing. Every time I blocked one, another text arrived a few hours later until even Mia joked that he must be buying burner phones. I laughed, promised I wouldn't answer, and kept blocking every new number. 4 days later, Ethan's mother called. For one brief moment, I thought she might apologize. Instead, she dismissed everything as one small mistake, insisted men naturally noticed attractive women, and argued that I had humiliated her son by testing him. When I reminded her that he'd called me his roommate and tried to get another woman's number, she brushed it aside as harmless venting and told me I owed him an apology. That was when I realized Ethan hadn't learned to twist the truth overnight. He'd learned it somewhere. I ended the call without another word. The apartment was quiet again, but this time the silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt like the space left behind after finally seeing someone for exactly who they were. Oh, Margaret wasn't the last person to take Ethan's side. That same afternoon, his best friend Tyler messaged me, accusing me of betraying Ethan's trust by setting up a loyalty test. I started typing a long reply before deleting it and sending only one sentence instead. He called me his roommate while asking another woman for her number. That's all you need to know. I blocked him before he could respond, but Tyler wasn't the only one who believed Ethan's version of the story. Within hours, more mutual friends reached out, blaming me for destroying his mental health and ruining his reputation. They didn't realize Ethan had done that himself. I had simply stopped covering for him. His next move was pettier. One Friday night, I opened Netflix and found myself locked out. Hulu, Spotify, and every other shared account had been reset. For a moment, I thought something was wrong with the apps before realizing Ethan had changed every password. Ironically, they were all linked to my email, so recovering them took less than half an hour. As I reset the final password, it finally clicked. He wasn't trying to get me back. He just wanted a reaction because any response was better than accepting the consequences of what he'd done. The harassment didn't stop there. The next day, an anonymous number called me a manipulative woman who couldn't keep a man. There was no name attached, but it hardly mattered. Either Ethan had sent it himself or someone had completely believed the story he'd been telling. The moment that hurt most came by accident. I ran into Ethan's cousin Lauren while shopping at Target. We'd always gotten along, but the second she recognized me, she quietly turned her cart around and walked away without saying a word. Watching her avoid me made me realize how completely Ethan had rewritten our relationship. To his family, I wasn't the woman he'd betrayed. I was the unstable girlfriend who had secretly trapped an innocent man. That evening, Mia stopped by with a takeout and tried to lighten the mood. You know they're calling me a homewrecker now? I stared at her. You asked him 3 questions. I know, she said, shaking her head. We laughed anyway. It wasn't funny, but sometimes laughing hurt less than carrying the anger around. Near midnight, another message appeared from an unfamiliar number. I'm willing to forgive you if you admit you were wrong. We can go to couples therapy and work on your trust issues. I still love you. I read it twice before replying with 4 words. Lose this number too. Then I blocked him again. Life slowly settled into a routine. I went to work, came home, cooked dinner, read a book, and stopped checking my phone every few minutes. Without realizing it, I also stopped rehearsing arguments in my head or wondering when the next fight would begin. One evening, as I sat alone with a cup of tea, I noticed something I hadn't felt in months. I wasn't anxious anymore. The apartment no longer felt like a place where I had to brace for another lie or another argument. For the first time since the breakup, it finally felt safe. That peace lasted exactly 4 days. Tuesday started like any other workday until my manager asked me to step into her office. The moment she closed the door, I knew something was wrong. I received a call from someone claiming to be Ethan, Linda said. He told me you're having a serious mental health crisis and suggested we put you on leave before you became a danger to yourself. For a second, I honestly thought she was joking. I assume none of that's true, she added. No, I didn't think so. Relief washed over me, followed almost immediately by embarrassment. I'm sorry he dragged my job into this. You don't owe me an apology. Linda shook her head. I've managed people long enough to recognize manipulation. I told him that if he was genuinely concerned about your well-being, he should be calling your family, not your employer. I thanked her, but before I left, she grew serious again. If he contacts this office again, document everything and let me know immediately. Daniel had said the same thing. So had Mia. Hearing it from my manager made me realize Ethan wasn't just trying to win me back anymore. He was trying to damage my life. That evening, my neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, texted me. There's a man sitting across from the building. I think it's your ex. She sent a photo, and even from a distance I recognized Ethan's car. He'd been parked outside my apartment for nearly 2 hours watching the entrance. You don't have to come home if you're uncomfortable, Mrs. Alvarez said when she called. Instead of driving home, I went straight to Daniel's house. The next morning I reported everything to the police, the breakup, the non-stop messages, the call to my workplace, and Ethan waiting outside my building. The officer listened carefully before explaining there wasn't much they could do yet. I was sitting on a public street, he said. Unless he threatens you, trespasses, or violates a court order, we can't intervene. It wasn't the answer I wanted, but it wasn't surprising either. Before I left, he handed me his card. If he escalates, call us immediately. I slipped it into my wallet with the uneasy feeling that I was going to need it sooner rather than later. 2 days later, Mia texted me. Don't panic. I immediately knew something was wrong. She sent me screenshots of an anonymous Instagram account with no profile picture and no real name. The post described a man who had spent 3 years loving someone manipulative, someone who secretly tested him and created traps to make him fail. Ethan never mentioned my name, but he didn't need to. Every detail made it obvious who he was talking about. The comments were worse. People called me unstable, accused me of emotional abuse, and congratulated Ethan for escaping. Mia called moments later. You okay? Not really. Want me to report the account? No. Then let me make a post explaining what happened. I shook my head. I won't waste my energy convincing strangers who already chose their side. They're lying about you. I know, but every reaction is exactly what Ethan wants. He wants me to look angry, obsessive, and unstable. The cease and desist gave me 4 quiet days. Slowly, I stopped checking my phone every few minutes. I slept through the night without waking up at every notification and started believing Ethan had finally accepted that it was over. That peace didn't last. Tuesday morning, I went to the gym like I had every week for the past 2 years. I expected a normal workout before work, but the moment I walked inside, I saw Ethan standing near the entrance. He wasn't exercising. He was waiting for me. My first instinct was to walk away, but instead I turned toward the front desk. I need help, I told the employee. That man has been harassing me for weeks. By then, Ethan was already approaching. We need to talk, he said. No, you can't ignore me forever. I already have. He tried to move past the front desk, but the employee stepped between us. This is between me and my girlfriend, Ethan said. My ex-girlfriend, I corrected. The employee looked at him. She doesn't want to speak with you. You need to leave. Ethan immediately did what he always did. Hein blamed me. She's overreacting. I almost laughed. Hein had contacted my workplace, waited outside my apartment, created fake accounts, sent payment requests, and ignored a legal warning. Yet somehow I was the problem. I have documentation instructing you not to contact me, I said. Ethan's expression changed. You can't hide behind lawyers forever. The employee pointed toward the door. You have 30 seconds. Ethan stared at him, realizing the argument was over. Before leaving, he looked back at me. This isn't finished. Then he walked out. This time, I filed a report with witnesses and security footage supporting my statement. The officer who handled it took the situation much more seriously than before. There is a pattern now, he said. We'll be speaking with him. For the first time, I felt like someone outside my family understood what was happening. Later that afternoon, Rachel called. This helps, she said. I wish it never happened. I know, but now there's documentation. What happens next? If he ignores the warning, we discuss stronger legal protection. Hearing that made everything feel different. This was no longer just a painful breakup. It had become harassment. That evening, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Claire! The voice belonged to Robert Carter, Ethan's father. I had only met him twice during our relationship. Unlike Margaret, he rarely involved himself in family conflicts. I heard about what happened at the gym, he said. I wanted to apologize. I didn't know how to respond. For Ethan? Yes. He paused. What he's doing is wrong. Those words surprised me more than they should have. I've told him to leave you alone, but I'm not sure he'll listen. His voice sounded exhausted. His mother has always protected him from consequences. I should have stepped in sooner. This isn't your fault. No, he said quietly. But he's still my son. We sat in silence for a moment before he added, I hope you find peace after all of this. So do I. It wasn't enough to erase what happened, but it was the first sincere apology I had received from anyone connected to Ethan. 2 days later, another message appeared through Facebook. The profile belonged to a woman named Olivia Hayes. Hi, I know this is strange, but did you date Ethan Carter? Every instinct told me not to answer, but I replied, yes. An hour later, we were on the phone. I think we may have been dating the same man, she said. Everything inside me went still. Olivia explained that she had met Ethan through work 2 months earlier. He told her he had recently ended a long relationship, but his ex couldn't accept the breakup and kept trying to control him. The story sounded familiar because I had heard the same version. When did you start seeing him? I asked. She told me the date. We were still together. He said you were basically roommates waiting for the lease to end, she added. The exact same lie. Olivia told me she confronted Ethan after hearing rumors about another woman. That was when he admitted there had been someone else. For nearly an hour, we compared timelines. The late meetings, the cancelled dinners, the sudden work emergencies. Everything matched. The anniversary dinner he cancelled, he was with Olivia. The weekend construction emergency, Olivia. The overnight conference, a hotel with Olivia. By the end of the conversation, the truth was impossible to ignore. The loyalty test hadn't caught Ethan about to betray me. It exposed a betrayal that had already been happening for weeks, maybe longer. I had no idea, Olivia whispered. I believe you. I'm sorry. So am I. She sent me screenshots, photos, reservations, and timestamps. The evidence confirmed everything. Strangely, the pain felt different. Learning he had actually cheated hurt more than hearing him flirt with Mia. But underneath that pain was relief. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't controlling. I wasn't imagining things. My instincts had been right all along. For weeks, Ethan had convinced me the problem was my inability to trust him. Now I understood the truth. Trust wasn't the problem. He was. I didn't contact him immediately. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel the need to defend myself or prove anything. The evidence on my phone wasn't for revenge. It was closure. Everything that had confused me suddenly made sense. That evening, I sat on my balcony and thought about the recording from Murphy's. Hearing him call me his roommate and ask another woman for her number had felt like the worst moment of my life. It wasn't. The worst part was knowing he had already chosen someone else while still coming home and pretending everything was normal. The recording hadn't destroyed our relationship. It revealed that Ethan had already destroyed it himself. The next morning, I downloaded a temporary texting app and sent him one final message. I know about Olivia. I know you were seeing her while we were still together. Do not contact me again. Then I deleted the app. Within minutes, my phone started filling with calls from unknown numbers. Rachel had warned me this might happen. Over the next few hours, Ethan tried calling 16 times. I answered none of them, not because I wanted revenge, because there was nothing left to say. The truth no longer needed me to defend it. 3 days later, Tyler called. The same Tyler who had accused me of being manipulative. I almost ignored it, but I answered. I owe you an apology, he said. I waited. Ethan admitted everything. He finally told us about Olivia. I closed my eyes. He lied to all of us. I should have listened before taking his side. You believed your friend. I believed the wrong version of him. For the first time since everything started, I heard genuine regret from someone who had judged me. I appreciate you calling, I told Tyler. I don't expect forgiveness. I'm not angry anymore. And I meant it. Anger required energy, and I had already spent too much of mine on Ethan. Before hanging up, Tyler added, the guys aren't speaking to him anymore. I didn't feel satisfied hearing that. I didn't want revenge. I wanted accountability. After that, Margaret never contacted me again. According to Robert, Ethan finally admitted the truth after enough people questioned the story he had been telling. The version of events he created began falling apart. The Instagram post disappeared. The accusations stopped. The payment requests were withdrawn. The unknown numbers finally stopped appearing. The silence I had wanted from the beginning finally came, and this time it stayed. A week later, I started therapy. Not because I regretted leaving Ethan, but because betrayal changes the way you see yourself. I didn't want his lies affecting every relationship that came after him. During one session, my therapist asked when I first realized something was wrong. The phone, I answered. And what did you tell yourself? That I was probably overthinking. She asked what I would tell that version of myself now. The answer came easily. I'd tell her to trust what she was seeing. Not because every fear means someone is betraying you, but because healthy love shouldn't make you constantly question your own reality. A few days later, Olivia and I met for coffee. I expected it to feel uncomfortable, but it didn't. We were two people who had been lied to by the same person, and somehow that made the conversation easier. I'm glad you agreed to meet, she said. So am I. We barely talked about Ethan. Instead, we talked about our jobs, families, books, and the lives we wanted to build after everything that happened. Before leaving, Olivia looked at me. I'm sorry he lied to both of us. I know. I still replay everything sometimes. I did too. She hesitated. Does that ever stop? I smiled. I think it already has. How? I stopped asking why he lied. What do you ask now? I looked down at my coffee cup and thought about the answer. What kind of life I want without him. Olivia smiled. I like that. So do I. Over the next few weeks, my apartment slowly became mine again. I moved the furniture, replaced the decorations Ethan never liked, added plants to the balcony, and changed small things that reminded me I was no longer living around someone else's preferences. None of it was dramatic, but every choice was a reminder that healing wasn't one big moment. It was the collection of small decisions that slowly made my life feel like my own again. One Saturday, Mia came over with coffee and pastries. She looked around the apartment and smiled. It feels different. It is. You seem different too. I thought about that for a moment. I think I finally understand what happened. You understood before. I understood the facts, I said. Now I understand that none of it was my fault. Mia smiled. I've been waiting for you to believe that. We spent the afternoon building a bookshelf I'd ordered. Halfway through, we realized we'd installed one shelf upside down, and we laughed until tears filled our eyes. For the first time in months, those tears had nothing to do with pain. People sometimes ask if I regret the loyalty test. Maybe in another relationship, with someone who answered honest questions instead of turning them into accusations, there would have been another way. But not with Ethan. The test didn't create a betrayal. It revealed one. If he had simply mentioned his girlfriend and walked away from Mia, none of this would have happened. He had every chance to protect the relationship we built. He chose differently. That choice belonged to him, not me. Almost 2 months after everything began, I opened every window in my apartment and let the morning air fill the rooms. Sunlight crossed the floor, while my phone rested quietly on the kitchen counter. No unknown numbers, no accusations, no apologies that weren't real. Just peace, the kind that comes when you no longer have to question yourself. I'm 28 years old and I still want the future I always imagined. A home, a family, and someone who chooses honesty even when it's difficult. The difference is that now I understand love isn't measured by how much pain you can tolerate. It's measured by how safe you feel being yourself. The last thing I heard about Ethan was that he was still telling people he was the victim. Maybe he believes that, but it doesn't matter anymore. The people who know me understand what happened. More importantly, so do I. And that is enough.